Hello, and this is a series on answering questions about what you can expect from CS in college and out. So the first question I want to ask and answer for you is CS or computer science the right program for me to study? Now, this is a bit of a loaded question. As an assistant professor in computer science, of course my answer is yes. But in reality, it may not be exactly what you're expecting. And there's a lot of similar types of degree programs out there, and they have similar names, but they do very different things. And so I want to kind of break down the three most common programs that you're going to see. Now, the first is computer science. Computer science is really about how do we solve problems with computers. And these problems can relate from anything from artificial intelligence, computer graphics, and computer vision. They deal with things like how do we store information effectively and look that information up. We're going to start solving large problems, and as things are getting more and more complicated with things like swarms of robotics and swarms of AI, how do we approach new problems that we didn't have a chance of being able to do 5 or 10 years ago even. So computer science is a constantly evolving field that is allowing us to expand what we can do because of limitations that no longer exist. You know, if you had talked to me when I was an undergraduate and we had talked about the Internet of Things, I would have laughed at you. That wasn't a thing. The Internet was pretty new. And it wasn't that long ago. In fact, I graduated from my CS program before Google came out. And Google came out in 1999. So think about all the changes that have occurred in the last 20 years dealing with computers. And if you think that's amazing, go back 40 years and some of the older professors you might have, what changes they've seen. So it's a constantly evolving field. It's all about solving problems, and it's going to be about solving problems with software. So code that we write in order to solve a problem. Now, most people, when they get out of a CS program, their logical career field is going to be in writing code. And so if sitting down at a computer and writing computer code and solving a problem that way is what interests you, then computer science, or CS, is what is probably a best choice for you. Now, one thing that I see a lot of times people send me is that they want to be in a CS program and then they say, I can't wait, or maybe I had some experience in high school working on configuring computers, or I built computers, or I, was able to work with the school or maybe a small company and add users and do things like that. That is a program called information technology, or IT. And a lot of IT departments in a lot of businesses around the world do that very thing every day. And they do simple things from changing out toner cartridges in your printer, and that's kind of the grunt level work that everyone starts off doing, all the way up to configuring virtual servers and allowing access and security to determine who has the rights to see those servers and use them. They're going to configure applications on the back end so that front end users can use them. And they're going to make sure that there's appropriate network traffic and people can get to the servers that they need to while preventing hackers and other people from getting in there. IT encompasses a lot of different areas, and you might have picked up on some of them. Things like networking and security, user management and server administration, and many others. And if that's what you're interested in, then an IT program is probably more along the lines of what you want. Now, sometimes people get a little confused because CS programs and IT programs will often share a few classes, especially in the first year or two. So your freshman and sophomore years, you'll sometimes take courses with both CS and IT majors. And that's because a lot of IT majors need to have some basic understanding of scripting and programming languages, things like that. And CS majors sometimes need to know some basic administration types of skills. But your last 2 years, and probably starting in your sophomore year, you'll have a large divergence of what you'll be focusing on and doing. And so understand that they do two completely different things. The IT person on a day-to-day basis will not be writing programs. They might write simple scripts to automate tasks, but they're not going to be writing programs. So they're going to be administering, they're going to be securing, they're going to be making sure appropriate access is granted, and more. So if that interests you, information technology, or an IT program, sometimes they'll also call it an IS, information systems, will work well for you. Now, the third big program that you're going to see, especially in the United States, is computer engineering. And I hear a lot of people, especially in high school, say they want to be a computer engineer. And I ask, well, what do you want to do with that degree? And they'll say they want to do programming. Well, in reality, that's more of a CS decision then. Computer engineering, when we talk about it from a college level, is dealing with the development of the computer chip, the processor or processors more accurately, that your computer uses to perform its various functions. So it's going to be good for doing things, for example, like how to pick, what types of pathways and how do we make the gates on a processor smaller so that we can condense and put more processing power in the same size package, or maybe even a smaller package. How do we do things like power management to make it so we can have a laptop that runs for hours and hours instead of just an hour? How do we do things like that? And that is all being taken care of by computer engineering. Now, every once in a while, you will see some computer engineering students taking a software programming course like C or assembly. And the reason why is they have to understand what it is they're doing in order to make it work for us, the end users, and the in-between users like software developers. However, they're going to be focused more on hardware. And there's a limited number of companies that do that, and that makes that job feel very competitive. It also makes it very challenging not only to get into, but in order to complete, because with the idea of working with small physical structures, you have to have a great understanding of your sciences and your maths in order to work with it. Most of the time when I talk to someone who says they want to go in computer engineering, especially as a high school student, what they really want is computer science. And so that's something to keep in mind. Now, those three fields are very common in the United States. Now, there are different and similar fields that other countries have, and you'll sometimes see from time to time. You'll also sometimes see them here in the U.S. Sometimes it's more of a graduate program instead of an undergraduate program. And the two that I want to talk about specifically is CIS, Computer Information Systems, and Software Engineering. So let's talk about CIS real quick first. So your Computer Information Systems is more about the application of the programming concepts that we would develop in computer science. So your computer science is working at a very high level, in a lot of cases theoretical, and we need to apply known methodologies. So the CIS, or Computer Information Systems, is working more with known technologies and making them applied. A little less theoretical, a little more practical. My own master's degree is in Computer Information Systems, and I will tell you that most of the courses I took, I had CS majors in with me. But there was probably about a 30 or 40% difference in my graduate level studies where I took courses that either had just Computer Information Systems students or even in some cases some IT students. So it's a nice blend of the two, a little less theoretical, a little more practical. Now, the downside of that is you're not going to be coming up with brand new techniques. And that's a disappointment for some people. So think about that when you're talking about which system should I pick and use. Now, the other one that I mentioned was software engineering. And this is a lot more prevalent, I find, in some overseas colleges. And a software engineering is very similar to a computer information systems program. In fact, you might be able to kind of look at them and weigh them evenly. Engineering in general is about making repeatable processes. So when I teach a software engineering course, which is probably my favorite non-programming course to teach, I talk about how software engineering is about creating repeatable processes. Now, that doesn't mean writing the same program over and over again, but it means finding ways to make sure that we deliver a software project on time, on budget, and doing all the things we initially planned. And that's a real big deal, especially seeing not too long ago, anywhere between 70 and 80% of all software development projects fail to meet one or even all three of those guidelines. So software engineering is going to be taking a very practical step and looking at how can we be repeatable to deliver software projects on time, on budget, and doing everything that we originally talked about it. It's going to focus very heavily on known technologies, and it's going to focus on being able to provide usable software. The one downside I have seen in a lot of software engineering programs is they tend to be very focused on specific technologies. And so as software changes and software languages come and go and evolve over time, sometimes we run into issues with them. And that's just because the person learned a very specific technology and can't necessarily translate that moving forward. With computer science, and going back to that, since we talk more theoretical and we talk more concepts, it gives a great way to grow, and you can keep up with any language and technology that comes out. I my own self, as a software developer for about 20 years, I have seen languages come and go, both in popularity and period. And so being able to adjust to an ever-changing world is very beneficial. When I was an undergraduate, I literally had 0 courses in internet technology and in web design. However, I have spent a majority of my professional career working with those very technologies because I had a good understanding of programming and problem solving and just adapted to the new world environment. So think about what it is that you want to do when you're choosing your program to pick. If you're in the US, then the 3 most common that you'll see, as I mentioned before, is computer science, information technology, and computer engineering. Each one of them is very important and has their own place. It's just a matter of which is the one that you want to use.